So in addition to talking about subjects and verbs, we also need to talk about subject pronouns. Now, if you already know what pronouns are, congratulations, that is great. You're going to learn what some French ones are today. And if you don't, let's talk a little bit about what that means. Subject pronouns refer to people without using their name. So if I wanted to tell you a story about Matt, and I said Matt left his house, Matt got in his car, Matt drove to the store, Matt bought a cake, Matt ate the cake. It gets a little repetitive that I have to keep saying Matt, 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 Matt. You already know I'm talking about Matt. So we would use subject pronouns such as he, she, I, you, we, etc. to replace the word Matt. So now I could say Matt left his house. He got in the car. He went to the store. That's what subject pronouns will do. So for each of the 9 subject pronouns in French, I want you guys to write the English translation. French has a little bit more, or a couple more subject pronouns than we have in English, but you'll see why there are differences. I've split them up between singular and plural, and then I also have added whether they're first person, second person, or third person. Now, the difference between singular and plural, if you don't know, singular just means one, and then plural means more than one. If you are not 100% sure how first, second, and third person work, don't worry too much about that. It's just an easy way to organize the thoughts. So our first person starts with je, or J apostrophe, and I'll explain when you would use that a little bit later, and that's how we say I. So je is one of the things that you will say a lot when you are starting to speak French. And the plural version of that is the word nous, which means we, because if you think singular, I went to the store, but if you went with a group of people, you're still involved in that, so what you would say now is we went to the store. You and some other people together went to the store. Our second person subject pronouns are the word tu and vous. Now, both of these mean the word you. In English, we don't really have a distinction when we say you. It can mean you, one person, it can mean you, a group of people, it can mean a person you just met, a person that you've known forever. We don't have that distinction, but in French, it is going to mean a couple of different things. So tu is going to be our singular form, so we're just talking about one person, and our informal form. So we only will use tu if we're talking to people that we know well, or people that are a lot younger than us. The vous form can mean a couple of different things. So if we're going to use it in the formal sense, we're going to be using it as singular. If we were talking to maybe a boss or the principal, or if you were going to meet the president, you would want to use the vous form because that would be the formal side of it. It can also be the plural form of you, which translates in English more to words like you guys or y'all. I like to say y'all because I think it's easier to remember in terms of a definition for vous, but you would use, or I use vous when I'm talking to an entire class. If I was going to say, I need you guys to take out a pencil. Did you guys do your homework today? Y'all have a test today. You know exactly what I mean when I say all of those words. And so vous can kind of have a couple of different meanings. They all mean you, but one of them is plural, one of them is formal, and y'all is probably the best way to remember those. The third person, there's a couple of these. So our third person singular forms are going to be il, elle, and on. Now the two most important ones are going to be il and elle right now. On doesn't have a direct translation, so we're going to come back to that. Il is how we say he, and elle is how we say she. So when you guys were asking how old someone is, you would say il a quel âge or elle a quel âge. And that's the difference is that il would mean how old is he, and elle would mean how old is she. Now, on is a word that does not have a direct translation, so it's a little different. The best translation that I've seen is the idea of it meaning one. So if you think about someone talking, it's kind of like a general population term. So if I want to talk about people in general, not people you know, not people who live in Ohio, but just in general, people like chocolate, I would use the word on to describe those people. Or if you've ever heard someone trying to sound really, really smart, and they'll say, when one thinks of America, one thinks of the American flag. I don't know where that statement came from, I just made it up. But you get the idea that we're not talking about a specific person when we say on, or when we say one, we're just talking about the general person. If that's confusing to you, don't worry too much about it yet. You'll kind of get it as we go, but the biggest things I want you to get from the third person singular is the il and elle form, which mean he and she. Now on the plural side of things, we've got il and elle, They're pronounced the same as the singular form, but they've got an S on them when it comes to spelling. And these are both going to translate as they, but there is a distinction here between whether you're talking about a mixed group of people who are boys and girls, or when you're talking about only girls or feminine objects. Now, the feminine objects thing you'll learn about in just a second, so don't worry too much about that. But you are going to use elle with an S when we want to talk about a group of only girls. Now, if there are 500 girls in a room and one boy, you're still going to use il because of the one boy.